So, looking at this time of year and looking at these annual cycles, we use that as a reflection for all the times when we feel ourselves in a space of darkness. And whatever that darkness might be, maybe it's, just kind of a not so great day. Maybe there's something specific that has happened in one of your relationships. Maybe something in your business, your work didn't really go the way that you wanted to. Maybe you're not physically feeling well. We can give lots of definitions to darkness. But what I really want to look at is how we begin to consciously respond to the darkness. Does the darkness automatically trigger us into our coping mechanisms and therefore the coping cycle? Do we go into trigger, panic, reactive? Or do we have a way to access proactive, regardless of the darkness, regardless of how we feel about February, this time of year, or insert again any definition or description of experiencing darkness? So I'm going to call on Susie, our event coordinator, to pull up the handout on the highly sensitive entrepreneur and leader coping cycle. So, Susie, when you're ready, so let's give a revisit to this coping cycle. And for some of you who might be newer to the highly sensitive leadership training programs and the Business Miracles community, this might be your first introduction to the coping cycle. Community curator Lorna will come in a bit and help us locate a deeper, more in-depth training, which I'm not going to do right now. So know that that's available to you if you're feeling a little lost, or again, if this is super brand new to you. We're going to start at the top of the cycle where we see the word trigger. And so the trigger is what sends us into the darkness, or as the cycle shows us, an experience of anxiety, fear, lack of safety, and then plunging into our HSE coping mechanisms, pushing, hiding, also associated with the money archetypes of scullery maid and entitled queen. Eventually, we do start to come out of the cycle. First, we tend as highly sensitives to go into a space of kind of collapsing, beating up on self, a sense of shame. Oh, here I am again in my coping mechanism. Then, to help ourselves try to get out of it, we go into soothing and finally into recovery and rebound until we're triggered. And then we go round and round in the cycle again. What I want to highlight today is that there isn't anything bad about the coping cycle. And let's take a moment to write that down. There isn't anything bad about the coping cycle. If you approach the coping cycle from a good, bad, right, wrong perspective, you're just really giving your system more fuel for beating up on yourself and experiencing shame. So it's not about in the cycle, not in the cycle, good, bad, right, wrong, but it is about utilizing the natural tendency of the cycle proactively as an opportunity to evolve. So, just as all of these holidays have popped up around this time of year to try to remind us again that change is afoot, the days will get longer. Again, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, light will return. We want to establish our own practices to pay deeper attention to when we're in the cycle. And that leads us to the center of the cycle, where you see the word awareness. And the blue lines in the cycle represent that we can access awareness at any point in the cycle. It is never too late. Everything is course correctable. And it's awareness that moves us then or opens up the opportunity to access the Ayuk transformation process, to then be able from awareness to access understanding, to begin making different choice actions, to then be able to eventually come to a place of knowing where though we find ourselves triggered, there will come a time when that trigger is no longer experienced as a trigger, but experienced more as the other words that you see above trigger here on the coping cycle, as a moment of being touched or awakened, which comes from Bonnie Bednock and her work on trauma. It's an opportunity to pay deeper attention. So while we are here in this particular time of year, this is a reminder that there is actually power in the darkness. And I would like you to write that down. There is actually power in the darkness because it's through darkness that transformation occurs. We can't have light without the dark. We can't have transformation without obstacles and challenges. But it is the way within which we approach the darkness, the obstacle, or the challenge. And if we are able to see it as an opportunity for transformation, to take a moment to enter into creative stillness, then that is the way that we shift from coping into creating. If there's a level of consciousness in the darkness, we are still creating. There's a creative stillness that's occurring. And that's a beautiful sense of both and. Thank you, Susie. Now, the last connection that I want to make here on this week's training, creating versus coping, is a beautiful question that was shared on the forum recently by Shannon. And I didn't have a chance to respond to it on the forum, Shannon, so I'm going to respond to it here and now, making the connection to creating versus coping. And the question was about lead energy. And one of the trainings that she was listening to in her leadership track, where I speak about making a conscious choice of the energy that you're going to choose to lead with. It's actually not framed or spoken in the way of energy, but what are you going to choose to lead with? Time, money, or energy? What is your lead value? Excuse me, that's what I meant to say. And her question was about energy. Like, what does it mean to lead with energy? When you choose energy as your lead value, which just by the way, that is the lead value that the Business Miracles team is currently working from, you give priority to maximizing energy. And you can do that by asking questions such as, what's going to help me to be most effective? What's going to support me in being most efficient? How can I create this task, this project, this intention, this goal, while preserving and conserving as much energy as possible? How can I go about this fill in the blank task, situation, project in a way that gives me energy rather than takes energy from me? When you utilize lead value in that way, and again, particularly the lead value of energy, it brings, again, another level of consciousness to everything that you're experiencing and gives you easier access to creating versus reaction into coping. It's like direct access to the Ayuk in the center of the cycle. And then that can help you not get caught in the cycle so easily, so quickly, so often, or more easily find your way out of the cycle into the center when you do find yourself in the cycle. Because again, cycles are natural, the darkness comes and then it goes, it changes. Let's take a breath in and let it out. With that, I'm going to hand it over to our Business Miracles Community Curator for Curator Corner. Lorna, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. All right, so I just want to share where you can find out more about that coping cycle and review it in tandem with the training. So it's your very first training, no matter what track you're in. It's called How Coping Keeps You Captive. And, you know, the importance of it is huge. It's really the underpinning for understanding and remembering why everything exists in the program, in this program, in the way that it does, to support you specifically as a highly sensitive. So engage with that, re-engage with that. I know I've seen folks who've engaged with it a number of times saying, wow, this time when I went through it, it's like there was something there that wasn't there before. I wasn't able to take that in before, or something's changed for me. And so now I'm seeing that I'm coping in a different way, and a good thing I'm aware of that now. And the other thing I want to say is I want to link this to the marketing wheel training that some of you have done, some of you have in your training track, because the approach, when you realize that you're in coping, there's a twofold approach. One, and it shows up on your marketing wheel. So you have 2 slots for energy management on your marketing wheel. And one is your daily energy management, doing energy management daily. And that is, like Heather spoke about, proactive. So that's our proactive approach. Is if we do it daily, we're less likely to go into the coping cycle or to move out of it more quickly. And then the other slot on the marketing wheel for energy management is the go-to energy management. So what is your go-to when you're like, oh, I'm coping, I'm in my coping mechanism, I'm pushing, I'm hiding, I'm combo platter. And so that's having a specific, for me, it's really important to identify it ahead of time, because when I'm already going down that rabbit hole of the coping cycle, it's hard to like access, what should I do here? But if I already have it laid out, oh, I know for me that it's really helpful to go to an OFTU or to form to the universe, then that supports you in moving out of it more quickly, right? So that's what I wanted to mention. I also wanted to mention for those of you who have team, so if you're a team leader of any kind, start thinking about what can I do now to set expectations and a system for my team to proactively offset like tendencies and reactions that tend to come around February, you know, seasonal affective kind of stuff, right? So how can you use that now to be proactive instead of having to respond to it when it happens? Awesome. So from there, let's get ready to move into our breakout sessions. And here's what you need to know about that. Please stay on your video and stay muted unless you've been called on. And raise your electronic hand by using the menu bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can go under reactions. There's a raise hand button there. And you can do that to ask for support or to share something. And then when the coach calls on you, and please help all the coaches with this. First of all, unmute yourself, that's on you. Then help us with sharing your name, where you are videoing in from, and the leadership track that you are in, like marketing or self-care. And then please stay off the Zoom chat feature during the breakout session because we find it creates a distraction for you and others. And instead, you can use the community forum afterwards where you can share anything additional you have and just continue the conversation. And when the breakout sessions are over, Zoom will automatically return everyone to this main room. So that's all I have right now, Heather. Back to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lorna. Susie, let's go into breakout sessions for 25 minutes. All right, beautiful. I swear to God, every breakout session is like a birthday. It's like, oh, yay. Let's take a moment. Let's place our hands on our hearts. Take a nice deep breath and let it out. And just take a moment to let your eyes gaze around this breakout session, taking in the beautiful, highly sensitive faces and just making note of who is here in this breakout session. Just a reminder that we use breakout sessions to go deeper with the trainings, bring forward any questions that you have about trainings or anything in general, opening up for masterminding as needed if needed. We'll also get a 3-minute signal for going back into the main room. And if needed, I'll graciously interrupt us at that time so that we can make sure that we have time to reflect, connect until we connect in back as a full community. All right, beautiful. So I see Shannon. Yay. So, Shannon, I'd actually like to start by checking in with you since I just used you as a teaching example and just want to hear if what I had to share made sense in response to that question that you brought forward on the forum.
Yes, thank you. It made perfect sense. And it actually, I had a connection that to me, it seems there's a kind of a pathway there of focusing first on money, then time, then energy.
Yeah,
And
beautiful.
I can see how each one leads to the next.
That's right. That's right. And a lead value that brings up a good point isn't that we disregard the others, right? It's just more of what we lead with, and it helps us more easily make decisions. And especially since decision making can, often be discombobulating or come with a sense of confusion for us as highly sensitives. But you're absolutely right. They're all connected. And the lead value also really supports us in being and creating energy versus, again, that coping. So, good. Thank you. Thank you for letting me use you. Not that you had a choice, but I appreciate it. All right. So from there, thoughts, comments, questions, further support on creating versus coping. Raise your digital hand as a reminder. If you have something to offer someone who is engaging and mentoring with me as part of a mastermind approach, then just raise your physical hand so I can support you in jumping in. Okay. All right, beautiful. So Diane, why don't you start us off?
Okay, thank you. Heather, I just want to thank you so much for what you said about the darkness. There was a major shift for me because I'm kind of in a dark time, and my husband being diagnosed with a form of dementia, and just all the pressure on me, a lot of grief from losing my mother, a lot of things, but the idea that the darkness is an opportunity is huge. And it reminds me too of something that's been very helpful to me. I've been tracking my energy and the moon cycles and even putting it on my 30-day plan, which has been interesting. And just the idea of, the new moon is a time of darkness and a time of reflection. And it's just part of the whole cycle of things. And so I was kind of putting those two things together with what you said and really feeling
beautiful.
Beautiful.
Good.
Shift. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. You're so welcome. You're so welcome. And what I really hear you speaking to is that shift in perception, right? That we talk about in regards to the definition of a miracle. And I also want to welcome our newest members. Yay. I'm so glad you're here as you're diving into all of the trainings and teachings. But darkness is really beautiful. As I said, darkness is really powerful. That's the shift. Darkness doesn't automatically equal bad, wrong, difficult, get rid of it, get through it, though that is very much the socialized teaching. So as highly sensitive, since we feel things more deeply, and we're going to feel that darkness in whatever shape or form, and the particulars that you shared for yourself, and we have an opportunity to work with it, and we can create as a result from that deep, dark beauty.
Mhm.
So thank you for that, Diane. And we're all here with you as you continue through and beyond current experiences. From there, Fidelma?
Hi, Heather. Hi, everybody. I was creating today, and I was doing well. I had done my OFT. I did my self-assessment, and I was reviewing my program guide, and then I did an OFTU, and then I went into creation mode. but it kind of felt really heavy. The energy was heavy. It was sticky. It just wasn't flowing. And my mind said, oh, here I'm at this again. and then I pushed through it then, and I just kind of made some progress and just updated my program guide and said, right, that's it. I've done it for now, and I'm going to sit with it for the next few days. So based on what you've said today, there's questions there. How could I create and explore more how I could have maybe that was okay what happened today, into the darkness around it.
Yeah. Well, again, there's really no right or wrong. That's really important. And that's what I really hear you speaking to, Fidelma, is the way that we talk about in the training program, which is approaching things differently. And that's everything for us as highly sensitives. So let's look at something like creating your program guide, right? Which is basically a marketing material. Sometimes we just have to get things done, right? So let's say you had a prospect call happening, in a couple of hours as you're working on that guide, and you might just need to get it done. And so you might have to then push through a little bit, as you said, in order to get it done. Yet that doesn't mean that we still can't be conscious and reflective around it. To have the awareness, that center of the cycle of like, wow, this is feeling really heavy for me. I'm going to note that. I'm going to mark that. And I have a prospect call in a couple hours. So I have to get this done for that prospect call, because at the end of the day, what do I want? Well, what I really want is I want to be able to continue in my business. And then that means enrolling clients, and that means serving in the way that I'm called to serve. So, okay, but I'm going to mark this. I'm going to come back to this a little bit later, and I'm going to see what was going on there, and how perhaps could I do this a little bit differently? And that's where something like self-assessment would come in. Now, you might have another moment at another time where you have scheduled to work on your program guide or marketing material, but you don't have a prospect call in a couple of hours. So you have time and you have some space. Okay, great. Then still pay attention right there in that moment to why is this feeling heavy? Take a moment to go through the reins it process or some other sense of inquiry. Give yourself the permission to do that differently, because an 80%er, someone who's not highly sensitive, is not going to stop. They're not going to reflect. They're not going to mark it. They're just going to get it done, and they're going to move on. And there's going to be like, what energy? Heavy cream in my coffee? Is that what you were saying? Right? Like there's just not going to be that same understanding. So again, it's not like, oh, it has to look this way in regards to the consciousness, the reflection, the inquiry. What's important is that it is happening, and then that's how the pattern changes. Whether it happens later based on a time constraint, or you do have the flexibility and freedom for it to happen in the moment. What do you hear in what I'm sharing, Fidelma?
To allow myself give myself permission to do the reins it when it's feeling heavy, that I don't actually need to push through it. I can just, and I posted it on the forum. I said, I'm going to sit with it. So I posted it, but I've updated it, but I still know I'm going to sit with it. Yes. So I'm going to do the reins it to see why is it still heavy.
Great, good, exactly. And then that begins to change the pattern. That changes the coping cycle. It changes your relationship to the coping mechanism, and it changes that belief that the only way to take care of myself as a highly sensitive is to cope my way through. And that's not true at all, because one of our highly sensitive strengths is creativity. But you must be willing to redefine what that looks like. It's going to look very, very different than probably any way that you were traditionally trained and educated to see it as. Okay, beautiful. From there, let's go to Brianna. You're welcome. Brianna, welcome.
Hi there. I just wanted to step forward and share in more of my position of gratitude to both you and Shannon, because saying the lead value and then And I was like, oh, let me, I don't remember what my lead value was, to be quite honest. Like, let me go figure out what that was, right? I pulled out my intuitive plan and it was energy. But in that intuitive planning session, it was very clear for me, it was not just energy, but it's the energy of Jesus. And so that has made for me, because I always auto write every morning on the question of what actions am I meant to take today to most optimally lead with purpose, which is my acorn. And so come tomorrow morning, I'm going to change it of what actions am I meant to take today to lead with the energy of Jesus.
Nice, beautiful. That's going to make such a difference. You're so welcome. That's going to really be a great tag on to last week's breakout session and what you were sharing, right? Because you were feeling overwhelmed last week, which is a number one sign, right? That energy is not being used consciously. And so that question and using that in auto writing is going to help bring you to what is meant to change about the way that the team is working and the way that you are assigning projects, etc. Yes. So it's fantastic. I'm so thrilled to hear that. And it's a great reminder, right? Lead value is meant that it's supposed to be at the front. Right? So it is meant to be in our awareness, but we forget because again, we're human, right? So when you're working with lead value to help you with creating what can be put in place so that you can be reminded, that can help you to remember. That's just part of it, right? I've just gone through a whole recent thing with the Business Miracles team because we declared energy as our lead value in August. Totally lost track of it, right? Totally lost track of it with completing 2020. And so I had to bring it back to the forefront for the team and be like, let's look at the last 4 months. This was not energy led. So what needs to change now so that we can get back there? Okay. Yeah. Good. Beautiful. From there, let's go to Jackie.
Hi.
Hi.
Creativity is one of the strengths that I struggle to identify with in connecting with my business. So I wondered if you could sort of support me in finding and identifying, recognizing, where that does happen in business.
Yeah.
Easy to see like, oh, it's artistic or music, those sorts of, slots for creativity I'm good with, but sometimes I feel like I don't acknowledge where I am being creative in my business.
Yeah. It's a great point. And tends to often kind of fall into, exactly what you're describing for a lot of highly sensitives. I'll hear things like, I don't know. I don't paint. I don't sing. I don't dance. What are you talking about? So my question for you is there somewhere that immediately comes to mind that you tend to approach things in your business differently than others who do what you do?
I think in general, it's the conversations and the way that I lead clients from point A to point B. Just
Can you give an example?
I think I have always encouraged them to really try to get clear on what matters to them beyond like thinking of real estate as just a money thing, but helping them really get in touch with the emotional side of the purchase. Sometimes as realtors, we're taught not to make it emotional, but I want to bring that in a lot of ways as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's creativity. That's your highly sensitive creativity right there. And any aspect of creative solution creative solution that's being applied in the business, that's our highly sensitive use of creativity. So in a way, we could almost even say the entire miracle approach to business, to work, to life is our highly sensitive creativity. The willingness to see things differently is creativity. The willingness to do things differently is creativity. It takes that creative energy.
That's hugely helpful, just to position it as anytime I'm doing anything differently than the norm, I've automatically tapped into that strength then.
Absolutely. Brianna, something to offer here?
Yeah, I can also offer another way to maybe think about how to identify
Great.
the specific points, because I find myself in this conversation frequently because I come from a very, art, music, theater background. And so like people that are part of that part of my life, they're like, how are you, like, you don't do any of that anymore. Like, don't you miss it? And I don't miss it. And the reason why I don't miss it is because when I think about, like, the way I've sort of explained it to them is like, I look at where I feel the same level of flow and excitement that I feel when I do sing, or I do theater, or I do artwork. Like I experience that same level of flow and excitement in different things associated with my everyday work. And then that is fulfilling the same need for me. It's just fulfilling it in a way that I make a heck of a lot more money doing it. So, so that would be another place, is to look at like, where are those points that you really feel that same level of excitement and flow, to then say, this is how I'm specifically bringing creativity into my work.
Thank you. That's helpful too. So there's 2 touch points that my brain can kind of focus in on, doing it differently,
Yeah.
and the energy I carry while I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And there's one other thing that I just thought of with a friend of mine who's a little bit different than me, and in the sense that she needs to be doing, like, her daily meditation is to draw, because if she stops drawing, then the creativity stops flowing into her consulting business. So she sees the direct connection there. So like, that might be also something to look at for yourself, is there an enabler to activating that creativity with strength in your business that you need to do outside of your business?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. Yes, that's so beautiful, because what I was actually going to bring up is I was going to bring up horse riding, Jackie. Isn't that an area of a happy place for you?
It is.
Yes.
And
And
yeah, that's where I went to when you were talking about the drawing.
yes, that's exactly it. So that's a beautiful creative connection. And that's I so appreciate that, Brianna, that you brought that up, because again, it just really highlights how we do things differently here, because as highly sensitives, we don't compartmentalize, right? Each area blends into the others. So of course, if I'm doing something that's going to open me, that brings me to my happy place, like horse riding, that's immediately going to more positively impact what it is that I want to create in my business and my work. It's not, I only get to horse ride once I've done all of this work that feels really heavy and dreary and I have to push my way through. That's the 80%er way. That doesn't work here. Okay. Take a breath in and let it out. Fatin, welcome.
Hello. Um, I just want to know, how do you go from, the coping mechanism when you're out in that anxiety, fear, lethargy, and going up into soothing, right? And you're actually very aware. I mean, at least I'm very aware of that cycle, that outer cycle. I'm aware that I'm going through all this, and I'm aware that I want to soothe, and I do soothe really badly, which is not good. And so what would be like, a flip the switch thing that doesn't get me to the part where I have to soothe, where I don't just dwell on it, so
Yeah.
that I can enter that awareness circle?
Yes, beautiful. So well said. So, I can hear just from how you're sharing that you do have the awareness. So that really is like the first most significant step, right? And sometimes we can access the awareness, and then we can, go into more of an understanding after the awareness. And sometimes it takes us longer. What I really encourage first and foremost is not to get caught up in the beating up on yourself part of the cycle. Is that very similar to like what we were talking about with Fidelma? When you do have the awareness, then almost like really, really take that in, right? Be like, okay, I am aware of this. And then the next question is, what would I like to do with this awareness? And from there, that's where what Lorna was sharing in her Curator Corner is put in place an energy management tool ahead of time. Like make the choice today, like right now after this training and roundtable. What is going to be my go-to energy management tool when that awareness strikes that I'm in the coping cycle? It's like, no question, that's it. No deciding, no deliberating, just that's my go-to tool. And I'm going to do that for 30 days. And then I'm going to see and I'm going to assess, how did that work for me? And then the muscle builds, and then it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and the cycle becomes shorter and shorter and shorter.
Okay, thank you.
Willing to start there?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good,
Thank you.
beautiful. All right, we've gotten the 3-minute signal, so let's all take a breath in and let it out. I am here acknowledging and outing myself that I did not hold any of you accountable for saying your names, where you were videoing in from, or your leadership track. So I'm going to trust you to continue the connection on the forum and fill in those blanks, just in case Lorna finds out about it. Let's take a moment. Let's place our hands on our heart and take a moment to look at any notes that you've taken and reflect on the takeaway. And also make a note for any asks that you do want to bring to the forum after this session as well. And we'll rest here until the others come in and join us. Again, just making note of what you're taking away from today's training and roundtable. And if there are any remaining asks, making notes so you can bring those to the forum. And otherwise, just resting with hand on heart. This alone is powerful for us to be connected, heart-centered, in community. All right, beautiful. Deep breath in and let it out. There is beauty in the darkness. There is power in the darkness. Creativity and creating can happen within stillness. And we do have other options other than coping, but yet coping and getting caught in the cycle is not bad. It is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for awakening. How is this meant to apply for you, your business, your work, your life as we go throughout this next week as highly sensitive entrepreneurs and leaders? Just a reminder to share takeaways on the forum. This is what I heard and how I will use it in 20 words or less. Other than that, this is Heather leaving you with many blessings, business miracles. Use your sensitivities as strengths until next week's training and roundtable. Thank you. See you on the forum.